Good evening. I'm Congressman Glenn Ivey, and I represent Maryland's 4th Congressional District, which includes parts of Prince George's County and parts of Montgomery County. We're doing a webinar tonight because, as you know, the government is actually in a shutdown this time. I know we've had some of these before to provide information to you just in case it happens, but it's really happening now. So we wanted to make sure we provided information to you as much as possible to help you figure out where things stand for you, where we think things might go, and what you can do as this moves forward to take care of yourself and your families and figure out the next steps from an employment standpoint. Tonight I'm joined with Ottis Johnson, the National Vice President for AFGE. He'll be answering some questions as we go forward. To my right is Aaron Harawa, who is my Chief of Staff. He's going to be the moderator for the panel tonight. And we're joined virtually by Rob Shriver, who was the acting director of OPM under the Biden administration, had previously worked at OPM during the Obama administration, and he's now with a group called Democracy Forward, which is doing a lot of litigation to protect the interests of federal government employees. I'll turn this over now. I want to kick it over to Aaron. And what we'll do is we'll provide questions, sort of frequently asked questions that we think you will be interested in hearing about, to try and cover the lay of the land with respect to where things stand for federal government employees, and give you general background information about the legalities of it and where we think things are going to go. But with that, I'll kick it over to Mr. Harawa.
Thanks so much, Congressman. Rob, many federal employees have experienced a federal government shutdown before, but we know the new administration brings many new concerns. What recommendations do you have for current federal workers in this moment who are seeing or experiencing concerning practices at their offices during this shutdown?
Thanks for the question, Aaron, and thank you, Congressman, for putting on this webinar and having me join you. I think federal workers should be diligent in taking a look at how their agencies are implementing this shutdown. Many of you have been through this drill, sadly, many times before, and so you generally know how it goes. For those who haven't, when there's a government shutdown, that's because there's a lapse in appropriations, and the agencies go through an exercise to determine, number one, whether there are some workers who can continue to work and get paid while they're working because they are paid by something other than appropriations. So if you're one of those employees, you would continue to work and get paid. Number two, there are people who work without getting paid until the shutdown is over. And those are people in the so-called accepted category. Sometimes these folks are referred to as essential employees, but that's really not the legal standard. Accepted employees work on things that have to continue even when there is a shutdown and therefore an inability to pay, things related to national security, property, things like that. And then there are other functions that are necessary for that accepted work to continue, like some HR work or maybe some procurement work. So that's a whole other category of people, is like these folks, they're going to continue to work, but you won't get paid until after the shutdown ends. And then the third category is, of course, people who are furloughed. They are people who are paid by annual appropriations and do not perform any of those accepted functions. And so they would be classified as the type of employees that get furloughed during a shutdown. Agencies typically publish contingency plans, shutdown contingency plans. OMB used to gather all of those up so that you could see them all in one place. They are not doing that this year. Those shutdown plans, though, should be posted on your agency's website. And I've seen some media publications like Federal News Network who have consolidated as many as they could find into one place. So you can check that out and you can see how that contingency plan looks and whether it's been implemented appropriately. And then, of course, we have some new things coming out this year that have never happened in a shutdown before, to my knowledge, which is the administration threatening widespread reductions in force connected to the shutdown. Although if you look at the details, this really doesn't appear to be connected to a shutdown. And I can just tell you off the top that Democracy Forward, with some of the federal employee unions, has filed a lawsuit to stop the administration from moving forward with reductions in force during the government shutdown, because we think that that's not the kind of activity that agencies are allowed to engage in under the law when there is a lapse in appropriations. So more to come there. We're hearing that in the next few days, federal workers will start to get RIF notices. You should take a close look at those. You should consult with legal counsel. You can go to the Rise Up Federal Workers Legal Defense Network, because that is very unusual. That has not happened in the past, where you have a permanent loss of job because of a temporary lapse in appropriations. And I'm sure, Aaron, there will be some more questions. I can go into some more details later, but let me just stop there with that overview of folks should be diligent and be on the lookout to make sure that they're not doing this shutdown in ways that are different than they've done them in the past that are problematic.
Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate that. And over to you, National Vice President Johnson. What are you telling your members to be on the lookout for in this moment? And what are you advising them to do to help them navigate this moment where information that's usually coming out of one government agency clearinghouse is coming out of disparate agencies? You know, we have the gamut of the agencies in this area in particular. So what are you advising your union members to do in this moment?
Thank you, Aaron, for the question. Pretty much like Rob just spoke about, the getting in contact with your agency. Well, your agency will be getting in contact with you to let you know what is going to be happening with you. Some agencies have today already started furloughing their people. Some are pretty much stretching it out a little bit further, like some agencies that fall up underneath the trust funds. They are able to keep their employees a little bit longer. But we're having a district-wide meeting for AFGE District 14 on tomorrow night as well, to let the members know that AFGE will continue to monitor all of these things that's happening, these rifts that this administration is talking about doing firsthand. This is something, like Rob said as well, that we've never run into before. This is not business as usual with us. So we have our general counsel office monitoring all of these things that this administration is supposed to be doing.
And if I could jump in for a moment on that too, I'd be helpful for those of you out there, as these notices come into you, if you could forward them to me and my office, that'd be useful. I've got a couple of those today via text. And the important part of that is that we get to compare notes. I can share them with some of my congressional colleagues, with Democracy Forward, with other union leaders and the like, so that we're all on the same page, and it gives us a chance to monitor whether, you know, different agencies are doing this in different ways, or if they're all acting consistently and the like. So send us the information too, and we'll share the reconnaissance with our stakeholders that are working with us on this.
Thank you so much. And Rob, you kind of touched on this in your initial response to my first question, but what legal and institutional protections exist to counter moves like the OMB memo that we saw come out last week? I know you just mentioned the lawsuit that Democracy Forward filed, but what other tools are available, whether that's tools that are within Congress's wheelbox or tools that average federal employees that are being impacted right now can do to make sure that these moves are blocked?
Yeah, Aaron, and I'm proud that AFGE is a plaintiff in that lawsuit that I mentioned, along with with AFSCME. And Ottis has been a great partner on these issues. So the problem with the administration carrying out reductions in force during a shutdown stems from the rules under the Anti-Deficiency Act. And federal workers who've been through these shutdowns before probably know that the Anti-Deficiency Act is like a scary thing that you need to pay attention to, because basically what that law says is that it is a criminal violation to incur expenses that are not authorized by law. And so when an agency is directing employees to work during a shutdown, they need to do that consistently with the Anti-Deficiency Act. Because it is a statute that has criminal and civil penalties, there can be challenges with how you sort of enforce that in courts. So we've brought multiple claims in our action that are getting at the heart of this issue, that there are only certain things that you're allowed to do during a shutdown, and that the agencies have to be following those rules. Some things that employees can do if they think that the agency is violating it. Number one, you can report that to your Office of Inspector General. You can report it to your member of Congress. If you think that they're taking action and retaliating against you for that kind of thing, you can file a complaint with the Office of Special Counsel. There are whistleblower organizations out there that you can talk to. And I always recommend that the first stop for union represented employees is to go and raise these concerns with your union. We can together tell the story of what's happening here and use the oversight levers that exist to expose this and put pressure on the administration to follow the law, in addition to anything that might come of the litigation that we filed.
Yeah, and Congressman, let me ask that question of you as well. So in this unprecedented moment, we're seeing the administration step all over Congress's constitutional duties and responsibilities to the American people. What can Congress do to counter the administration's overreach in these efforts? I know that litigation has been one tool that House Democrats have looked at. Are there other means that you are exploring to help counter the moves from the Trump administration as we navigate the first day of this shutdown?
Yeah, great question. I think part of what's going on right now is the fight with respect to the shutdown of the government is to use that as a lever to pressure the Trump administration with respect to the health care coverage fight. That's the $1 trillion in cuts with respect to Medicaid. That also includes the expiration of the credits for the ACA, the Obamacare health care coverage. So we're trying to leverage that, and our hope is that this is the right place to draw the line for the fight back. And I think the Senate will stay with us this time on it. But I think we need if we have a chance to get a win here, I think it'll help to push back on the Trump administration. So I think that's one big piece. And you know, as that happens, I think one of the reasons that'll be helpful is a lot of the people who are just finding out that they could lose their health care coverage, many of them supported Donald Trump, many of them are in red states or red jurisdictions, and they're going to have second thoughts about where he stands now. And more significantly, in some ways, they're going to press their local elected officials, the congressmen who are here in the House who've been supporting the Trump administration, members of the Senate who've been supporting the Trump administration as well. I'm hoping we can turn that around with this kind of pressure, because I think those members are putting their seats at risk. And politically, I think it's critical for us to make sure that we put as much heat on them as we can in order to turn that around. But I think the legal piece, and you know, Rob's done a great job of laying that out. There are members of Congress who've also been able to join in on some of the lawsuits that Democracy Forward has filed. Usually we don't have standing, but there are occasions where we do, and we've had some wins on that front. But I think the key is to use every tool in the toolbox, every opportunity we can to push back, and the public piece is a key one as well. Rob just mentioned a moment ago, we've got a litigation avenue, which is the courts. We've got Congress here, although the Republicans control the Senate and the House, but there's also the public opinion piece too, and making sure the public understands all of what's going on and the impact that can have, I think, is important. I'll give you just a couple of quick examples. One of the things a lot of people didn't realize when they were firing governmental employees is the services they were going to lose when these government employees disappeared. And that can be longer lines at Social Security, longer lines at the VA, not getting the services that you deserve. It can also be like, for example, at NIH, clinical trials get shut down for Alzheimer's or cancer. There's a lot of services that the federal government provides. In fact, thousands of them that people don't even realize, you know, they miss the water till the well runs dry kind of scenario. So we need to make sure we're putting that out there and explain to the people, this is what you get from the federal government. This is what you're losing when they fire these federal employees. And one last point, I think they're starting to realize that there's a real impact from when they let more people go than they have remaining to do the work. The FEMA piece, for example, they're getting a lot of heat about their failure to provide the type of recovery funding that I think is expected and frankly, required under those circumstances. And I know there are agencies where they're starting to bring people back. They're trying to do it quietly, but it's a clear acknowledgement that they fired too many people. They didn't know what they were doing when they did it. They didn't have a plan for doing it, and it's been a very willy-nilly Elon Musk waving the chainsaw thing kind of around. That's kind of what it was about. It's something they're going to have to start trying to fix. But we've got to keep the pressure on them at all times to make sure that the public understands it, and we keep leaning on them to fix what they've broken.
Thank you so much. And Rob, earlier in your opener, you mentioned that there are different protocols for different agencies in terms of what federal employees should be looking out for as they go over their agency's contingency plans in this shutdown. Can you just speak to those details a little bit more? As you know, the Congressman's district is home to over 45,000 federal workers, so there will be lots of federal workers tuning into this call looking for guidance about how they should navigate this situation with their individual agencies. If you could just walk us through a little bit more what these contingency plans have looked like in the past, what you are seeing in this current moment. I think everybody on this panel here saw HUD's website yesterday where they put out pretty partisan language about this government shutdown, and it wasn't really advice to their employees. But can you just walk through how federal employees should be navigating these agency contingency plans in this moment?
Yeah, I sure can, Aaron. And let me just be clear about how all of this works in real life. No communications that agencies put out during this are them doing a one-off. This is all highly orchestrated by OMB. Every step of the way. All of the communications that happen are orchestrated by OMB. So when an agency puts language like that on its website, it is highly likely that that came down centrally rather than just an agency making a decision to do something on its own. And in fact, I think you see language just like that showed up on the HUD website yesterday on multiple agency websites. I was just, for example, pulling up the contingency plan for the Department of Agriculture, and on their website, I saw the same language that appeared on the HUD website. So just understand that this is all orchestrated from the White House, from OMB, from Russ Vought, and that they're directing agencies to do this. Anytime that a shutdown is approaching, agencies go through the same process where they dust off the contingency plan from the last time, and they take a look at how they applied these exceptions in the past, whether the funding sources have changed at all. And then they go through an exercise of categorizing employees based on how they are interpreting the law. I think that for many employees who've been around in the federal government for a while, they've probably had the same designation year after year, because as I said, we do go through the shutdown drill, it seems, on a regular basis now. If all of a sudden your designation has changed, I would look at that. And if it's changed and it's not like you have some new source of funding that's paying your salary, if you were previously viewed as somebody who's accepted and now you're not, you should take a look at that. If you were previously not accepted and now you are, you should take a look at that. There is some discretion that administrations have in how they interpret those standards, but ultimately the standards of the Anti-Deficiency Act have to be met. I think another thing that can be interesting to take a look at is because you have so many in your district, so many different agencies, you do have folks that work in similar jobs at those different agencies. And so comparing notes with your colleagues across agencies that are in the same jobs as you are and seeing whether they've been deemed accepted or not, that could be interesting information as well. I think overall the message is that we see that they are trying to leverage this shutdown to sort of turbocharge the massive reductions in force program that they launched so many months ago. And so because that seems to be their goal, we have to look for any kind of anomaly, anything that looks different about this particular shutdown, and raise questions about that and raise any of those concerns to the kinds of entities that I mentioned before, whether that's your union or whether it's your agency's HR department, your Office of Inspector General, your member of Congress, all of those different organizations. Look for the things that don't seem right based on the experience that you have in going through these before.
Yeah, and Ottis, do you have anything to add to that? I know AFGE represents employees across a whole host of federal agencies.
AFGE, yes, we do represent a lot of the people that these things are happening to, like you mentioned about the website that at HUD yesterday. Well, it wasn't just HUD. It was pretty much nationwide. VA, Department of Labor, Social Security. Everybody was being hit with this same type of language, which we definitely believe would be a hatch act. If one of us did something like that, they'd be ready to fire us. But we got to stay cognizant on what we do, because again, what this administration is doing is not something that any of us have ever seen. I've been through a couple of shutdowns before, and this is completely different. They're more vicious in what they're doing, and they have a plan that they have been working on to get this stuff out, and it's definitely not coming from one person.
And Congressman, here in Congress, you know, there's been, again, a lot of talk about how do we push back against this administration and what they're seeking to do with the federal agencies. You've been on the front lines leading a lot of those efforts as a part of the Labor Caucus. But more broadly, what are House Democrats looking for in this shutdown fight that really speaks to what your constituents need to continue to meet the moment?
Well, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but one of the pieces of this goes to how the appropriations process works. And what's happened is Congress has appropriated the money under the Constitution. We have the power of the purse. We control the amount of money that goes out. The executive, which is the president, is supposed to spend it according to the directions given to the executive branch by Congress. The problem right now is that Trump has decided he's not going to spend the money according to what Congress has told him to do. They've got various arguments that they want to test out in court: impoundment, rescission. They're clawing back money. They're holding money. And I think part of the logic there is if they can break Congress's role with respect to controlling the power of the purse, it gives the executive branch even more power. So one of the things we've been fighting about, and one of the pieces that should be in this resolution as we resolve the government shutdown, is a law, a legal agreement that shows that when Congress appropriates the money, the Trump administration is recognizing and committing that it's going to spend it the way that we were telling them to spend it. And that should go without saying, but nothing goes without saying with the Trump administration. Trump is, norms, traditions, and the like don't constrain him at all. In fact, the law doesn't necessarily constrain him either. So I think one of the big things we have to do is to change that. And then if we can do that piece, for example, it gives us the ability to negotiate different amounts of funding for different entities and institutions in our particular districts. I mean, for example, the agriculture research centers in my district, one of the things we're worried about is whether they're going to try and take the funding away from it so that it can't continue to do the work that it does. We all saw what they did with USAID, basically destroyed the agency, eliminated the agency, even though he didn't take the legal steps to have Congress approve the elimination of the agency, and he did it just by taking the funding away and removing all the employees. We've got to fight to make sure that doesn't happen, and making sure that we have the control over the money that Congress is supposed to have under the Constitution is a big step in making sure we win that fight.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Before we get into the nitty-gritty about what resources are available to people to help them navigate this situation and the economic impact that this is going to have on people's everyday lives, Rob, could you just talk to us about what Civil Service Strong and Democracy Forward is doing to provide resources to individuals that have not only been impacted by this government shutdown, but have been impacted by the massive layoffs that have occurred over the last 8 months?
Yeah, Aaron, so we have been working with a coalition of about 150 organizations that all care about federal workers and want to support federal workers as they're going through all of the upheaval caused by the Trump administration. One of the programs that we launched in partnership with AFGE and the Partnership for Public Service is the You Are Not Alone program. And so this is for federal employees of agencies going through a reduction in force. We will have agency-specific resources. We just did a webinar for the State Department, for example, where we can walk you through how to file your appeal with the Merit System Protection Board, what are some flaws that we're seeing in the agency's rationale in carrying out the RIF, so that you are armed with that information when you're going through those appeals. We can connect workers with volunteer lawyers who will provide an hour of free consultation on your legal issues through the Rise Up Federal Workers Legal Defense Program. We develop resources specifically from Civil Service Strong or with our coalition that help explain to folks what's going on and what they can do. There's Know Your Rights resources on civilservicestrong.org. There are explainers. There are video tutorials. And it's really important that people do take it upon themselves to file challenges before the Merit System Protection Board. One of the tools that we hope to have in our toolkit is that the MSPB would certify class actions to challenge RIFs, for example, and they've not been doing that. And so since they have really been hesitant to certify those class actions, it's important that everybody who's affected by one of these actions and thinks it was wrong file their own appeal with the Merit System Protection Board, file a grievance through your union. Your union reps can help you figure out which path is the right path to go through. If you're not represented by a union in a bargaining unit, then it may just be the MSPB where you go. But if you're in a union, then they can help you figure that out. And then there are lots of resources out there to help you manage through that. We do expect that the MSPB will ultimately consolidate cases. And so then we're hoping that, you know, the cases where there's a well-developed factual record, where there's legal representation, that those will help tee these up for good decisions that will affect everybody who filed an appeal. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. But check out civilservicestrong.org. You should also know there are organizations that are part of our coalition that are helping feds figure out what their next career is. There's an organization called Feds Forward that does that. There's an organization called WellFed that provides career counseling, mental health counseling, a space for feds to gather. There are lots of other organizations that are looking out for federal employees' mental health. And you can get connected to those by coming on to civilservicestrong.org. We're trying to figure out all the different needs and make sure that there's a hub that everybody can come to and get the help that they need, whether it's related to being on the job now or challenging an action that's happened to you or dealing with the transition into a life after working for the federal government.
Appreciate those resources, Rob. They're really helpful to help people navigate this moment in time. And on that note, let's get to some of the nitty-gritty questions that people might be asking as they try to navigate the next few months ahead. Vice President Johnson, will federal employees be able to keep their health insurance during this shutdown?
Yes, they will. I've spoken to our legal department, and that's one of the things that they have stated, that people will still be able to get their health insurance. Also, going back to what we were just talking about before, right here in your county, in your district, in PG County, we'll be having a hearing on next Tuesday the 7th, where they are implementing help support the federal employees that either RIF, they can come in and start looking for jobs and stuff. So we'll be having that hearing on next Tuesday in PG County. Montgomery County has already done something similar to that, and we've been working with them as well. And I've also reached out to the governor's office, and matter of fact, he'll be on our call tomorrow evening to talk about the benefits and stuff that the state of Maryland will be helping the federal employees with.
Yeah, and on that note, Congressman, if you could just speak to, I know your office works in close coordination with the governor's office, if you could just speak to some of the initiatives that the state of Maryland rolled out this morning as a part of a resource package to help federal workers navigate this shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things that the governor's office has been working on, and in part working with the General Assembly to pass state laws to help provide additional protections and assistance. Part of that includes eviction and foreclosure protections. Under the state law, a court can take into consideration the fact that someone who's, before the court facing eviction is on furlough or that the government's in a shutdown scenario. That's a factor that they consider in either temporarily pausing or postponing the eviction or foreclosure. It's not a permanent solution, but it's helpful in the short run. And also related to that, I know the governor has reached out to financial institutions to see about efforts to, if you're having trouble with your mortgage or you're falling behind, the ability to try and refinance or, postpone or delay payments as that moves forward. I think there's a better relationship with respect to credit unions that represent a lot of state and federal employees. They might get more leeway with them than other commercial financial banks, but there's an opportunity there. With respect to utilities, I have to believe there's a law that's been passed in the state of Maryland that says they can't cut off the services while a customer is on furlough or during a shutdown. And that's aimed at the same sort of thing, a recognition that people are in a vulnerable position financially and trying to give them the space to dig out of it and not get too deep into that hole. But there's several of those that are available. And I think the governor they had a press conference this morning, and the governor went through several of those, and he'll talk about a little bit more of that as it goes forward. Also, there's, the faith community I've seen has really gotten active in Prince George's County. I've seen a couple that are launching job fairs, fairs with respect to figuring out your financial situation, with, advice for financial advice, food assistance for people who are running short on food and need assistance there. Different churches are doing different things, but I think there's a lot of possibilities there, and you should certainly reach out to your faith community connections as you move forward on this front. And we'll be working with them as well as we, depending on how long this goes, the needs could ramp up pretty significantly, and we recognize that. So we're going to try and work with anybody and everybody that we can, whether it's the state government, the county government, the faith community, or other private actors, charitable entities, to try and do everything we can to help people get connected with the services and assistance they need.
And Rob, over to you. How does the federal government shutdown affect federal employees, retirees that receive a pension from the federal government?
So it should not affect retirees because pensions are paid out of the retirement trust fund. That's a big fund that exists and doesn't depend on annual appropriations. So that money is there. The workers at OPM who work on retirement are in that category of workers who will continue to work and be paid because they are paid out of that trust fund as well. So there will be OPM staff that processes retirements and can deal with any changes that you may have. They should still be working under the OPM contingency plan. Where you might see a delay is with your agency HR folks who would normally work with OPM on retirement matters. They may be furloughed. Again, that will depend on the specific contingency plan that each agency has. But the agency may determine that those HR staff that work on retirement would not be accepted and would therefore be furloughed. But generally speaking, your retirement payments should continue uninterrupted, and issues that you have should be able to be addressed. Although I will note that the OPM retirement operations has suffered workforce cuts just like everything else across the government. And we're hearing about backlogs and wait times and everything else, even in the best of times there. That would not be a function of the shutdown necessarily, though. That would just be a function of the cuts that have happened so far under this administration.
Thank you. And Congressman, what advice are you giving to federal workers that have reached out to you about this shutdown and what it means for their future, without seeing a potential off-ramp for Congress here in terms of getting out of this shutdown? What should people be preparing themselves for in terms of a prolonged shutdown?
Well, I think it depends on, sort of where they are financially and where they are in their careers. someone my age, getting towards retirement's in a different posture than someone, say, in their 20s or 30s. My kids are grown. People that have younger children are in a different posture. We own our house. People that are paying off their mortgage are in a different place. But I think one of the things that unfortunately people are having to think about is just getting out of federal service. And I say that with a great deal of reluctance. I've been in federal government. I currently am, obviously, as a congressman, but I previously worked for the Department of Justice. My father was with the Department of Labor and helped to build a wonderful life for our family in that position. But I think just given the nature of where things are, there's a lot of instability right now, and the Trump administration is making an all-out effort to try and force people out. And so I talk to people all the time I'm encouraging them to hang in, but the reality of their life situations, people have kids in college. I can't afford this level of uncertainty. I get that. Now, the downside, obviously, for us as a nation is that we're losing a lot of talent right now. We're losing a lot of experience, a lot of institutional memory. We're losing a lot of capability. NASA's in my district, for example. We've got people who are, career engineers and scientists that have been doing extraordinary work. We've had, award-winning scientists come through there, but they've been trying to force as many of them out as they can, and many of them have had to leave. So it's something we've got to recognize. At the front end of that, we've got young people coming into their careers, trying to figure out where to start. And many of them, for example, had been trying to be on job tracks where you start out with a grant or an internship or a fellowship. The Trump administration is really cutting that back pretty dramatically. And, we've got to respect the fact that they might not be able to navigate that path, at least for the next year or two, until things stabilize with the Trump administration. For people who are in government service and think they have the ability to stay in government service, I strongly encourage it. I think public service is about as rewarding a career as you can find. And for those of you who it's a patriotism piece, I get it. And there are good benefits that can come with it too. The thrift savings plan, I think, is a real added benefit to the federal service that many people don't know about. So, from a day in, day out standpoint, feeling good about what you do is there. And many of these positions pay very well too. But these are tough times. The Trump administration is attacking union representation, trying to undermine that. It's trying to take away basic civil service protections that gave people confidence of stability in their careers and not being trapped in partisan political kinds of scenarios. He's eating away at that too. So these are tough times. But look, Congress is going to fight back on that. Democrats in Congress, at least, are going to fight back on that and see that we can do everything we can to protect it. We got the civil service position that we got because 100+ years ago, we saw how badly it worked when we had totally partisan and political appointees. Now we've got a civil services pick based on merit, based on an institutional experience, and it's worked extremely well for the United States. I know there are a lot of people that complain about the government, this, that, and the other, but those of us who are in the know realize that you all do outstanding work, and we greatly appreciate it. So try and hang on. I'm hoping that we can win back at least the House of Representatives and provide additional protections, try and move things back to where they were, try and stabilize the protections that unions could provide under the collective bargaining agreements and the like, and make sure that we do everything we can to help people just be able to come to work and do the things that they think are positive and right and making a difference for the American people.
Vice President Johnson, I'll ask the same question of you. What can people do? What are you advising your union members to do in this moment to help them navigate what looks like it could be a protracted government shutdown here?
Like Congressman said, people have been talking about getting out of the federal government because they need to have that stability in their lives. And right now, they do not have that. We're asking them to stand fast because we know that in the end, AFGE and all the other agencies that work with us, like Democracy Forward and the other unions, we believe that we will win in the courts. That's our last stance right now. But going forward, we're just asking them just to hold on. Hold on. Help is on the way. and we will be able to get through this. We weathered a lot of storms, but this hurricane, we will make it through.
Appreciate that. We're coming towards the end of the program here, but before we get to the closing statements from our featured speakers here today, I do just want to highlight that if you go to ivy.house.gov and fill out the casework request form, that's the best way to get in touch with our office to be able to provide us with information that you're hearing or that you're receiving directly from your agency that causes any pause or gives you any reason for concern. Please use our office as a resource in these difficult times. We want to be here for you, whether that's to help you get in contact with your union leadership or to help you find other resources as you navigate this transition. Once again, please go to ivy.house.gov to learn more information about the resources that we've discussed here today. The information from the governor's office is live on the website. There's also a live FAQ section where we go through some of the questions that have been asked here today and many more questions and get into a little bit more granular detail here. But we really do want to make sure that our constituents and people across the region know that Congressman Glenn Ivey's office is here to help you navigate these difficult times. But Congressman, I'll turn it over to you for closing remarks here.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. And for those of you out there who are fighting through this, I'm sorry you got to go through this. Unfortunately, elections have consequences. My guess is that most of you out there didn't vote for the guy that's currently in the White House right now, but, we got to get through this together. Russell Vogt, who is the guy who runs OMB, is basically the lead henchman for the Trump administration with respect to the attack on federal workers, said when he was writing Project 2025 that what he wanted to do was traumatize federal workers. He wanted you to feel trauma, then not want to get out of bed, not want to go to work every day because they're doing everything they can to try and force people out, either through firing them or just getting them essentially constructively removed by wanting to leave because the work conditions are so bad. But here's the thing. There's a lot of great work. Many of you are out there who've done great work over your careers, and you've got reasons to be proud of what you've done. I know I've got a lot in my background that I did as a federal employee that I feel really wonderful about because I think it made a positive difference for the country. I know many of you have that as well. It's unfortunate we got to fight to give you a chance to keep doing positive things for the American people, but that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm encouraging you to try and hang in there. Keep working as long as you can. We're going to keep fighting with respect to the work in the courts, working with the unions, pushing back here in Congress, even though we're in the minority. We still got everything we can do to muster, to try and push, to have things move in the right direction. And the court of public opinion is critical as well. Keep doing the good work that you're doing, and we'll keep moving things in the right direction. And we'll keep working with you to make sure that we can get through this together and get back to where we were, providing the American people with the types of services that they need and deserve, basically, as part of the U.S. governmental structure. So I'll stop there for now, and I'll give back to Ottis and Aaron.
Over to you, Vice President Johnson.
Thank you. And thank you, Congressman, for putting this together. You have been a steadfast proponent for us from day one. And you continue to put on these town halls to get the message out to not just people here in the D.C. metropolitan area, but nationwide. People are watching these things. To our administration that's in office now, I passed by the Department of Labor office building constant. See this big giant picture on there with President Teddy Roosevelt and President Trump, and it says "Workers First" on the bottom of it. If you believe in workers first, we're going to ask that you stay on that key and stop firing and riffing the federal employees and find a way to open the government back up. Believe me, the unions, we're not going anywhere, especially AFGE and all our other brothers and sisters in the international union movement. We are here to stay. And for all our brothers and sisters that's hearing me today, please stand by. We're here. We're not going anywhere. Just keep the faith and keep it moving. Thank you.
Last but not least, over to you, Rob, for some final closing words.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Ottis. It's always great to share the stage with you. And thank you so much, Congressman Ivey, for being such a champion of federal workers. And as Ottis said, continuing to communicate with your constituents through these vehicles. It's always a pleasure for me to be able to join you. I think the point that I want to close on is we're starting to hear from some of the Republicans in Congress about service challenges that they say are created by the shutdown. I heard the speaker mention mental health resources for veterans that he's concerned about aren't going to be available during the shutdown. Well, don't forget that it was DOJ that shut down the emergency suicide prevention hotline for veterans. Don't forget that yesterday, 154,000 workers ended their time in the federal government under the deferred resignation program. That was 2 million years of service that walked out the door on one day. And the OPM director estimates that double that number will walk out the door by the end of this year alone. You can't lose that big a chunk of your workforce and not have these workforce disruptions. These disruptions are happening all over the country. You know them best because you know who depends on you for the work that you do. We need to get that story out there. And we need to tell it in connection with the shutdown too, because it's just going to be worse under the shutdown. And if they permanently remove people using the shutdown as an excuse, then that number of 300,000 is going to go even higher, and the impacts are going to be felt even more dramatically across the country. So be vigilant in tracking those and telling those stories, and make sure that the American people are understanding that it's these dramatic cuts to the workforce, whether done through the DRP, through RIFs, under the guise of a shutdown, or however they're done. Those are the things that are causing the problems and nothing else. Thanks very much.
I do want to close out. I want to thank Aaron Harawa for moderating this. I certainly want to thank Rob and Ottis for coming on and providing the information and insight that they've provided tonight. To you all, I want to say this. We're going to try and resolve this as fast as possible, make sure we can get the government back open quickly. We do want to make sure, too, though, we restore basic health care rights with respect to the Medicaid cuts of $1 trillion. That we can't let that stand. Also, with respect to taking away the subsidies for the Obamacare, premiums. Many of you out there are relying on those to make sure you get the health care coverage you need. We're going to keep fighting for that, too. And we'll stay in touch. We'll keep providing information because this is going to be rapidly evolving, I would think. And we want to make sure that you're up to date and up to speed. And feel free to give us information, too, to make sure we're getting the information that you think we can use to fight for you, whether it's in the courts, whether it's in Congress, whether it's in public. We want to make sure we're doing all that we can. So, look, thanks for all that you've done as federal government employees. Thanks for all that you're doing. Stay strong, and we'll keep fighting with you. Have a good evening. Good. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You are